Okay. So last night I was kind of like, wait, why am I doing this again? And so I had to I thought it might be good to recap yeah, actually where this came from. Because when we started these weekly meetings, we were seeing a consistent pattern of I couldn't really get to my goal or what, I wanted to do for my project because I needed to take care of my mental health first, or like
Mm,
something personally is sort of stepping in the way of me getting, my goals met or my work done. And that's actually what kind of inspired me because I was also looking into this topic already. And this subject, these trauma survival styles, have to do with well, this is a lot of the reason why um, we don't show up fully or get things done or we get distracted from what our goals are is because we have these developmental issues that are blocking us from doing that. And so that's really what these presentations, and this is the last one out of this that I'm going to do, that's really what these presentations have been about. It's just you got a lot of smart psychologists and scientists who have sort of said, all right, these are the five developmental issues that we all tend to have. Some are more severe than others, but we all have some degree of them. And these are the things that keep us from being present and engaged and living the life that we want to live. So that's, just recapping where all of this started is that if there's some area of your life where you're not fully present, you're not fully active and engaged, you're not living the life you want to live, or you're not where you want to be, chances are, according to these, researchers, it's because of one of these five developmental issues, especially if you're noticing okay, here's a pattern of me having the same problem over and over again, or there's a pattern of me running to the same block in my life over and over again. It's because of one of these. So we've gone through three of these already. One is because, number one was the issue, all right, we're not showing up and we're not fully present and fully engaged because we don't have the developmental issue of connection. We're not fully connected to our bodies. We don't connect to people very well. That impulse has been blocked out of our lives, and we see the symptoms of that, mainly anxiety. The second one was a developmental need for attunement. We're blocked because we didn't get an attuned caregiver who noticed and responded to our needs at a young age, and so we don't even notice our own needs and we become over givers, and we get depleted from caring for other people's stuff, but we don't know how to care for ourselves. That was the second one. The third one was trust. That third one is an issue where we're like, all right, at a period where we were dependent, we didn't feel safe to depend on people. We had to take care of ourselves. We had to step up into the role of a parent, at too young of an age, or we saw violence or something way outside of a child's what a child to see at a young age. And so we don't get to be the dependent kids, and we don't know how to trust in ourselves or trust in other people or trust in life. We see life as a battlefield. And, that's an issue that can block relationships and block progress. All right. So now we're on to number four. Here's the fourth issue, which has to do with autonomy. And this is something in particular I think that might be relevant for, our weekly meetings, because this is an area where the hallmark sign of having this survival issue is being stuck or not making progress on your goals. Um, this is where that tends to come up. All right, so this is the as I just said, the people with the previous survival style, the trust survival style, these are people who experience trauma around the expression of dependency. And so as we talked about last time, sometimes you have caregivers that can make you feel like, oh, you're a freeloader because you're a dependent child, and even though you didn't ask to be here, I'm treating you like you're just a parasite. Go out and get a job. Take care of yourself. Stop depending on me. That can be traumatizing to a child, um, and we saw the consequences of that. This is sort of the opposite side of the coin. So after a child has their period where they're dependent and they need you to take care of them, every child also then goes through a stage where they're trying to be independent. They want to be autonomous. And we've all seen, especially around that toddler age, where it's like, I want to do everything on my own. I want to tie my own shoe, get away. I want to pick out my own clothes, that kind of stuff. That's a helpful, or that's a normal developmental stage for children. But there are some parents, some caregivers that block that normal development of independence and autonomy from happening. They get threatened by it. And so, yeah, this is a parenting style that said, well, I know what's best for you, but says that too much. Like these are parents that don't allow their children to have any kind of independent thought or autonomy or freedom in a lot of ways. And parents who do this to their children, parents who sort of, block that normal independence from developing, those tend to be three types of parents, according to these researchers. This is just, you know, I'm just sort of the messenger of what they're reporting on. Um, so one type of parent that can block normal independence in a child is the anxious parent. This is the fearful parent who's overprotective and undermines displays of independence. Um, I had a little, you know, tinge of that kind of parent growing up. Yeah, so like it's normal to be worried about your children and worried if they're going to be okay, but there are some parents where it's like you go outside, they're just terrified. Are you going to get a? It goes from are you going to get sick or just somebody's going to hurt you or somebody's going to whatever. When I was learning how to drive, for example, my mom was just like terrified, like, and that's part of the reason that stinted my ability to learn how to drive because it was just like even taking driver's ed was just like a nightmare. Like, oh, I'm gonna go up to the school. This is dangerous. Like, you can't get behind the wheel of a car. Um, so those types of really fearful, um, overprotective parents can sometimes stunt development of autonomy and independence just because they're so afraid of something's going to happen to their baby if they give their baby any like rope or freedom to live their own life. Also, the narcissistic parent, though, this is the child. These are the ones who see the child as a miniature version of themselves, and so this is the parent that says, this is you're a little me, and you're a new version of me, and like they want this child to be them. Um, you know, the parent wants the child to be the parent instead of the child to grow up and be themselves. Um, just a pop culture reference or something like that. I know one of you has seen Elemental, but there's this movie, Elemental, where one of the main characters has the dilemma where she's like, she works for her father's like a grocery store, basically. Her father was an immigrant who started this grocery store, and her father has this dream of like, all right, one day when I get old and retire, my daughter's going to take over the grocery store and continue my legacy. And the plot of the movie is like, well, she actually doesn't want to do that at all. And the idea of like spending the rest of her life in that grocery store makes her feel miserable, but it's her father's dream. And, so that's sort of the narcissistic parent where it's like, my baby is here to follow in my footsteps and lead my legacy, and they don't get to be, an independent version of themselves. And then finally, another parent that produces this that kind of, sometimes related to these other two is the dictator parent, the ones where like, my house, my rules, you do everything I say, and they're just very dominating, and the kid doesn't get any sense of autonomy. Um, so when that happens, the child compensates by like being sort of passive aggressive a lot of times, where it's like, all right, outwardly I'm gonna obey and follow what my parents says because I have to. I don't, but silently, oh, I'm fighting, I'm resisting, um, and so they ultimately become people pleasers outwardly because that's what they grew up doing, having to please their parents in order to just survive and get ahead in life. But they also become passive aggressive a lot of times, where it's like, outwardly they have to be agreeable, but inwardly they're not. They're doing the opposite. Um, Yeah, so doing energy work, I feel a lot of that a lot of times around the solar plexus, which is a chakra that has to deal with power and authority and all of that. It gets sort of smushed because there's smothering happening there, and so people can have with this kind of energy can have physical symptoms, high blood pressure because they're under so much pressure to conform with what the authority figure wants. They also tend to have tight or cramped muscles. They can have ulcers, colitis, and pinched nerves. And notice a lot of these symptoms, especially the ulcers and the colitis, have to do with the solar plexus area, which is in the belly, the stomach and the intestines. Um, so for the rest of this, I'm just going to go through these five. And so if you want to see the hallmark of a person who did not learn how to be um, self-directing, self-assertive, who did not learn at an early age how to run their own lives, basically, you can look for these five issues. These are the five hallmark signs of someone who is struggling with this developmental problem. And I'll go through these, but when you see these five, especially when they're clustered together within the same person, that is sort of the number one indicator that this person needs to go back and do some self work on healing this problem. All right, so just going through these five real quick, and then go into how do we fix it. So issue number one, that's a hallmark issue of these people, is they constantly feel stuck. These people, and we've all been this person at some point in our lives, but there are some people who have like a ongoing pattern of just stuck. Like, they're just procrastination, never making progress, never moving past, dealing with the same drama, the same issue, the same everything. Like there's just no movement, no progress. They seem stuck in some sort of conflict, um, or in some sort of procrastination cycle of procrastination. Um, and so one important note that I'll talk about when dealing with this, you might encounter these people who are just consistently stuck, consistently failing to make progress. Sometimes the temptation is to, try to step in and be the savior and like, okay, well, let's do this to move you forward out of this stuckness that you seem to be in. This is one of the most frustrating survival styles because they're the most difficult to help, right? They're stuck and they're in the same pattern for a reason, right? And when you try to help them and try to solve the problem and move them forward, a lot of times that will backfire. So that's really important. Just keep that in mind. Like if someone's consistently stuck, consistently paralyzed, consistently failing to make progress and procrastinating, it's for a reason. And like you trying to come in with a solution and be the savior usually will make things worse rather than actually help with this, cluster of people. The second way to recognize this type of person is that they will usually have some sort of fear of intimacy. And this, as it says here, because they had smothering caregivers, they learned to associate love and intimacy with feeling controlled or dominated or overwhelmed. And just like they did with their parents, they will present the good boy or good girl image the same way. As kids, they had to be agreeable and obedient outwardly to their parents, but as soon as the parent walked away, they you call them out of their name or say something under their breath. They kind of repeat that pattern as adults. So outwardly, they will present this facade of the agreeable, people pleasing person, um, but hide within them a rebel or somebody that doesn't want to be agreeable. Um, and so this leads to a frustration where like they're presenting a facade, they're presenting a character. They're not really showing who they actually are, and so they don't get to feel loved for who they really are, even when someone's attracted to their persona. And so this leads to like an intimacy issue because like if let's say I'm the type of person that does this and you become attracted to me and for whatever reason you want to get closer to me, I have in the back of my mind this awareness of like, oh, well, you're not actually drawn to me, you're drawn to that fake persona that I put out. And so that's where the intimacy divide comes in, or it's like, I know I don't want to show you the real me because that's not who you want. You want this manufactured image that I put out. And so now I'm afraid of getting close to you because you're going to see through that image and like you're going to see the real me and like, blah, 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 blah. That's a like key issue that the survival style has a lot. So the third issue that is a hallmark of this trauma survival style is pressure. These are also people who will live under just a constant just feeling of it. Yeah, you can see some people where it's like they're always under stress. I think of who was the mother from Good Times? She's like, damn, damn, damn. And it's like it's always, just angst and drama and pressure. That's a hallmark of this survival style. And so I think a good way to put this is that these are people who say should a lot. Here's an example from the TV show Insecure, Issa Rae's show. There's a character on that show, Molly, who is one of these kinds of people who just lives a life that's constantly pressurized. She finally breaks down and goes to see a therapist about it. And this scene was really good because it kind of highlights the therapist kind of draws out for Molly this pressurized lifestyle that she sort of adjusted herself to. Here's just portion of that script. The therapist tells Molly, after Molly says she should do something, the therapist says, "You say that a lot, should. You frame a lot of things in your life with should. Have you noticed that?" And Molly says, "No." The therapist then said, "Well, 2 weeks ago, you said things should be easier for me as a successful Black woman. Another time, you said things should have fallen into place by now. Is there a certain way you think your life should go?" And then Molly says, "I mean, I do have specific goals, and I think that if you work hard, it should." And then she catches herself. She said it ought to yield certain results. Therapist says there's a medical term called magical thinking when we believe that what we want can influence the external world as opposed to accepting things how they are. This is a good example of the pressurized lifestyle that this survival pattern produces. So that's the third sign. You'll see these kinds of people. I don't know, like it doesn't matter what it is. It's constantly they're going to be the person that's like, "Oh, I'm so busy, I'm so exhausted, I have so much on my shoulders, I have so much pressure, I have so many demands." They just constantly seem like their schedule is overloaded, or they're just burdened, or you know they're under pressure to meet a bunch of demands. When in reality, that's, as we'll talk about later, that's something they're doing, not life. Um, and so a fourth issue that you'll see with these people a lot is that they ruminate. This is the kind of person I have a couple of friends like this, where like months will go by and then I'll just be finding out that some conversation we had months ago they're still replaying, and they didn't like something, and like they've actually been harboring a grudge about and I didn't even realize. I'm like, well, we should have talked about this months ago. Like, why is this just now coming? And then so they've just been sort of like ruminating over a conversation, or over an interaction, or like, did I say the right thing? Did I do something wrong? Or did I talk too much? Did I talk too little? Replaying the last evening, and like, oh my God, I'm cringing because I did this, or that person said that. And it's just like they just replay the past a lot to the point where it becomes exhaustive. And they can hold grudges for an extended period of times. Again, something like everybody else has moved on and let it go, but like they're still, you know, dwelling over, something you said one night, 10 years ago, that, they feel a certain type of way about and never got it off their chest. And here's the fifth hallmark issue you will see. They will usually have some sort of ambivalence towards anybody that presents as an authority figure. So they are the people that will clash with the boss in some way or another. Um, Even again, outwardly, the same way they did with their parents, they may, go along with the person in charge, but some inner part of them is going to rebel. And so the key here is that they've internalized that parent-child dynamic. So now their inner adult, the inner grown-up that they have, may have a rule or set a goal or give an order, but their inner child is just going to automatically reject that rule, reject that order, and rebel. And so what they're doing is they have this um, constant inner parent, inner child fighting each other going on inside of them already. So anything that triggers that inner fight is going to see consequences. And one thing that will consistently trigger that inner fight is an authority figure. Um, and so, yeah, here's something that will often happen. Sometimes these are people like that are eager to know what the authority figure wants, so they can do the opposite. I worked with someone, for example, we were doing coaching, and this person consistently wanted homework. Give me homework, give me some homework to do um, until we meet again. And like I started noticing, like, okay, well, this person also isn't doing the homework that I'm giving, I'm giving them. So they're asking for me to give them something, and then they don't do it. Um, and that's sort of like a dynamic that will play out with this person. Like, even if it's just a simple thing, like, just making something up, I might say, okay, well, write a sentence, write one sentence about how you feel. And next week we'll talk about that one sentence you wrote. Wouldn't do it. A week goes by and like, okay, you couldn't write one sentence over the last 7 days. Yeah. That's the reason that happens is because subconsciously they have this inner part of them that is rebelling against anybody telling them what to do. And so that goes back to the earlier warning where it's like if you see somebody who's in this pattern and they present this stuckness or paralysis, um, sometimes the best thing is not to try to solve their problems. And in fact, they're the type of people that will tell you that. They get mad when you try to offer solutions to their problems because, they just want to vent. And like sometimes you might hear people say, it's good to say, wait, before you go forward, are you asking me for advice or do you want me to just listen? Let me clarify. These are the people you need to clarify that with because offering advice or solutions can come across as bossing them. This is what's internally going on. That's why they get so triggered by you offering advice because it triggers this like inner authority conflict they're dealing with. And so, it doesn't go well. So those are the 5 things that happen. Those are the 5 patterns that, show up in this type of person's life over and over and over again. How do we get past it? Because yeah, that's why I'm running my mouth about all this sort of stuff. It's like, all right, if we want to see some meaningful change, if we're really tired of these same patterns happening over and over and over since we've been children, we got to like do the kind of deep digging that it's going to take to actually change this stuff. And so, just let's first look at, what is the pattern? Let's raise awareness about it, and then let's start moving into doing the work it takes to actually change this. And from what I've seen, here is the overall theme. Is just recognition. Apparently, that does 90% of the work. Just recognize that what you're seeing, because this is a person who often feels burdened. They often end up in some sort of external conflict, like, oh, I'm just overwhelmed, overworked, under pressure. I have too much on my shoulders. Blah 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 blah. It starts with being like, well, actually, it's not coming from any external source. This conflict, this pressure that you are perceiving, it is not coming anywhere but from you. You are battling with yourself. You are pressuring yourself. You are the one who is doing this to you. Um, that is usually step one with this person. And sometimes that's where you got to stop it. Just develop the practice of recognizing ambivalence. Something I saw from the book, this therapist is sort of saying, like, with this type of person, you might just, again, I'm not going to try to solve, I'm not going to try to cheerlead, I'm not going to try to fix this issue for you, but I will raise your own ambivalence, and ambivalence just means a clash, like wanting two opposite things. I will bring your inconsistency to your attention. And so the example is, well, you told me you wanted to accomplish this goal, but I noticed your actions seem to suggest otherwise, period. I'm not going to say anything else. I'm just going to notice, like, oh, you're saying one thing, but I'm looking at your actions and you're doing something completely opposite. Now you deal with that inconsistency. And so just, keep doing that. Let's just keep bringing attention back to the way my behavior is not lining up with what I said I want to do. And eventually that will invite the question, well, is this really what I want to do then? Or, or what's going on? Um, Also, going back to the should, the pressurized lifestyle that's constantly focused on what I should be doing, what should be happening. Let's pay less attention to this should, what you think you should do, and let's pay more attention to what you will actually want to do. And that may seem like a simple thing, but for this survival style, it's actually pretty hard because they're the people more than others who grew up not really paying attention or not having anybody paying attention to what course of action they want to take. They're told what to do. um, and so let's pay attention less to what that inner adult is telling you you should be doing or what's supposed to happen or what you ought to be doing, and let's pay attention to more on what you actually want. And then finally, there's mindfulness. This is really what mindfulness is. It is the practice of coming back to what is currently already present, not the fantasy we have in our head. So let's practice accepting life the way it actually is right now and not how we want it to be or wish it was. Those are the things that, tend to help this person overall.